Okay, welcome back, everybody. I hope you had time to grab a coffee and have a little look around the exhibition. There'll be plenty more time for the rest of the day to carry on doing that as well. I'm really looking forward to this session, our next panel session. Picking up, I think, on some of those themes that came out this morning already, we're going to be talking about productivity, but in particular, how artificial intelligence can lead to greater productivity. And obviously, governments around the world are all kind of struggling with tight resources, limited budgets. So how can we use technology to help us deliver all of those things with the same resources or limited resources? I know I say this every time, but we really do here have a fantastic panel. I think it's possibly our most diverse panel in terms of countries, and we do have wider public sector as well in here. So any of those questions that you had about how we join up across different areas would be great for this panel as well. I'm going to do the same thing as normal. I'm going to introduce our great speakers, and then I'm going to throw it open to you, the audience. You're such a great audience. I'm really pleased that we have more questions than we can get through. It's a lovely problem to have. So keep putting all of those questions to our great experts. So joining us today, we have Emma Oakney, who is a real friend of the Global Government Forum and have been involved in our events before. Emma is the Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Data Officer at Employment and Social Development in Canada. Then again, another friend of ours, we have Fariz Jafarov, who is Executive Director for the Center of the Fourth Industrial Revolution Network in Azerbaijan. So it's come all the way from Azerbaijan, which is great. And then really good to be joined on the panel because it is quite unusual to have somebody from kind of the wider public sector with us here today. We've got Stephen Russell, who is Director of Data Strategy and Technology for the Warwickshire Police Force, Warwickshire Police, and also a member of the National Police Chiefs Council AI Delivery Board. If we have people in the audience who aren't from the UK kind of has numerous police forces across the country, and then they kind of link up together, so you can explain more about that. But Stephen is from the Warwickshire Police. And then I'm delighted that we are also joined by Merav Belinsky, who is VP of Data and AI at the Israeli National Digital Agency. So has come all the way from Israel. Great to have you with us here today, Merav. And last but by no means least, we've got Adrian Stallam, who is Chief Change Officer from one of our partners today, Sullivan & Stanley. So wonderful to have you here too, Adrian. So I think my opening question to everyone, given what we are talking about, and feel free to say a bit about kind of what you do as well if you like to introduce yourselves, but I think we've talked about AI a lot, but maybe it's helpful to have some concrete examples. So can you give us some real examples of where AI is already being used successfully in your department or your government, your area, to help increase productivity? Emma, I'm going to come to you first.
No, thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to this event. It's been extremely helpful, like the formal conversations, informal conversations. I've already learned a lot, so thank you for bringing us together to have this conversation. In terms of some of what we do, so like you introduced, I work in a department that's basically responsible for things like employment insurance, Canada student loans, and we get a lot of information from Canadians. So the core of what we do is really leverage AI, leverage data to really optimize meeting needs of people across the country. So when I look at productivity from my perspective, the biggest bang we've done in terms of really getting to value for Canadians is really looking at how we can responsibly leverage tools like machine learning, leverage natural language processing, leverage generative AI to really drive to dig through massive volumes of information to really improve services in terms of how we're delivering and to really get to quicker insights in terms of getting value to Canadians. And the core of what I would say around that is it has been extremely important to us to ensure that we're meeting the Privacy Act in Canada. So privacy is extremely important, cybersecurity extremely important, ensuring that we align with some of the regulations from our Treasury Board, extremely important. And you would be pleased to go on the Canadian website and see our AI strategy that was actually developed by our Treasury Board in consultation with Canadians. And it spells out some of the principles in terms of how we think about AI And the first principle you'll see there, it has to be human-centric. So no matter what we talk about today in terms of how we use AI to drive productivity, efficiencies, it's centered around humans, the experience of humans, and really ensuring that we have humans in the loop in terms of everything we do. So I'll pause there.
Emma, thank you so much. And we heard from Stephen Burt yesterday a little bit about the strategy, so great that you've referenced that as well. But as you're saying, you're using AI already just to go to kind of sift through those huge volumes of data and information that you have and get those insights as quickly as possible. Fantastic. Ferries, we'll come over to you now. Where are you already using AI in this way?
Thank you very much for the question. This year we started to apply AI in call center for public services. So we are basically trying to solve 14 different problems by applying AI. First of all, to recognize the voice of the customers calling to our centers about tax authority questions, about the digital economy or economy-wise and public services. And that system recognizes the voice of people and then convert to the speech and search the right answers through the legislation base and prepare the right response for our operator, human agents, that how they can actually answer the question. AI help us to understand the basically, since we understand the speech, we do understand the complaints right away, because it's very difficult to listen all 200 or 2,000 calls every day and to recognize why people are calling. And that system help us to, on the real time, to understand the person, either customer or our operators, increase their voice, their attitude, their performance, and their response to the questions. Maybe they are same questions. Operators are answering in different ways, so it helps us to put standards in place. And also, the system helps us to understand the performance of our operators and to understand in which field they need the training, education, and at the same time, the legislation might be changed every day, and there are lots of questions. It's very difficult to train our operators on time. The agent, AI agent, help us for doing that. On top of the system, we are also building a chatbot. 24/7 will be available for all Azerbaijani citizens. They can answer the questions. So far, we have trained over 500 million lines. It's kind of a small child. So AI, it works in that way. So you have to show the objects and explain that this is Apple, this is TV, and this is mom, this is dad, and then you have to train. And the more they get older, the more understand the situation, but still they still need your oversee, like sometimes asking question. So you have to control. So basically, we have attracted more than 1,000 volunteers to train the data to answer, because Azerbaijani language, it's completely different, and we have to train our small language models and large language models. And then at the end of this process, we are going to open this large language model to whole population free of charge, and the businesses, they can actually build their own AI solutions by using that. So 14 different problems will be solved by these AI assistants. But a week ago, Azerbaijani government adopted the AI strategy for next 4 years, and we also have a digital economy strategy. Myself, I used to be the head of the Digital Government Center for 5 years, and we have built more than 100 different information systems, including e-visa, e-procurement, e-agriculture, interoperability system between government systems. So in Azerbaijan, all government systems are talking to each other. We have digital ID, we have mobile signature, we have biometric AI-based mobile application, and every Azerbaijani citizen, we have 10 million citizens, they have their government inside their pocket in the application. They can see everything about themselves, they can get the services, they can share their data with business sector, government sector. But actually, when it comes to AI, we spent more than 10 years, first of all, to start to build personal identification number, to link all data to this personal identification number, then to make the information systems available, storages and infrastructures you have to build, train the data, and then you can come to AI. The mistakes the government makes, they run straight away to the digital or run away to AI. But before you come to AI, you have to build all these fundamental requirements, then you can start for AI. That's what we say. First, simplification of the processes, then digitalization. Then everything goes faster and smoother.
Barry, thank you so much. And it's really interesting because it's come up so much already today and yesterday, the importance of digital foundations to be able to fully embrace AI, and the importance of the digital ID, that identification, which is something in the UK, we don't really have that yet. We're kind of moving in that direction, but we don't really have that yet. So really interesting to hear what other countries are doing. And I love the way you describe it like a child, that the way you train it is going to impact how it develops and what kind of adult it turns out to be. So really interesting.
Ethics part is also part of it, like who is training?
Who is training, yeah, exactly. Thanks. Stephen, what's going on in the police force?
A lot, thankfully. I guess just at the kind of national level, policing is a little bit unique. So we break it down into three. We've kind of got a productivity stream, which I'll come back to, an effectiveness stream, which is kind of two sides of the same coin. But if you think facial recognition, CCTV retrieval, and then the third stream, which is unique to policing, how do we combat the criminal use of AI? Because sadly, you know, organised crime groups don't have procurement departments. They're not slowing down, and therefore we have a challenge to keep up with that element. But if I come back to the productivity, I guess we're very much, I mean, policing creates a lot of paperwork. It's not paperwork, but from an officer attending a scene through disposing of a crime in the criminal justice system, there is huge amounts of translation of information, forms, checking. It's kind of astounding the amount of hours an officer will have to spend logging information and moving it through the system. So we're very much looking at how do we automate some of that and provide some of those efficiencies back to the officer. An example of that is auto-redaction. So we have to redact a lot of information before it goes back to kind of criminal defense teams, lawyers, etc. Historically, people would be using a black pen or a digitized pen. Now we can auto-redact that and move on. Just very much a kind of simple use case. We're also looking at kind of CCTV retrieval. So, you know, we have thousands of hours spent watching CCTV. An officer is doing that, they're not doing something else. So how do you use AI to automate some of that and just provide those trigger points to officers? So, yeah, huge amounts of gains, some in the call center, so the command center, where we're triaging calls. So there's an AI assistant triaging the calls alongside a call handler to give them advice, to support it, to do the risk assessment. So, yeah, lots of examples, but we're heavily focused on the productivity element because in some ways that's the easiest gains to go at to build confidence and support.
Yeah, really interesting to have those examples as well. So I think all three of you have mentioned those kind of how you can help with the processes and those kind of routine tasks that need doing. And I think that's probably the area most people in the room will be familiar with. But also, we could explore also what you're saying, how AI is being used on the delivery of services, so CCTV and facial recognition, for example. And then obviously, which will be in our next session, how you use, you know, what do you do to combat AI being used by criminal kind of players as well. We've got our next sessions on cyber. But yeah, thank you, Stephen. And then Merav, coming over to you for what you're doing in Israel on these issues.
Thank you, Siobhan. So I've been for 24 years in the Homeland Security Department, where we've been using AI for decades, very related to the examples you gave. And for the past 2 years, I'm in the digital agency. So we are like a body that looks over all ministries in the government and all their subunits and trying to accelerate their digital transformation, including getting to the cloud, being more secured, etc. And of course, using data and AI in a more intensive way. And when I did this transition from Homeland Security business to more civilian business, I found that AI is not so popular. I've found out a lot of excellence pockets were using AI, but it's not like a systematic method. And I will give some examples of those excellence pockets. So nowadays, when we have building violations, when someone is constructing a building that doesn't have all the permits, so we usually send inspectors to the field, which costs money, and then we found out the building when it's up already, so it costs money to demolish it or something. And now we have conducted an AI system that scans the entire state and identifies building irregulations before the building is even up. So it saves time for the inspectors, it saves a lot of money dealing with it. So this is one really nice example. Another example is about public housing. There's a lot of bureaucracy and forms to fill and paychecks to deliver in order to see if someone is entitled of public housing. And now we're digitalizing the whole process, including AI that will extract data from those forms, so that the whole process would take less than half the time that it is today. So even though there are a lot of pockets, we're still giving a lot of efforts on how to encourage the ministries to use AI in more and more of their processes.
Brilliant, thank you. But even in the examples you've given, there are benefits not just to the government in process, but also to the citizen, making it easier for them to engage with government. Thanks so much. And then Adrian, so you work with governments, like different bodies across government. So are you seeing pockets of excellence? Can you already see AI being used in ways that you think are helping to boost productivity? Who's doing this well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's we work with both private sector and public sector, and you know, there's some great examples and some great examples talked here about augmentation and speeding things up and automation. I think there's some great stuff going on in the medical sector, in NHS, for example. NHS Manchester are doing some brilliant work in imaging and essentially reducing the time and increasing the accuracy of cancer diagnosis, but also augmenting surgeons. A lot of surgeons spend a lot of time doing not the heavy lifting of actual surgery. They do a lot of work on planning surgeries, and the AI can augment that, and means they're much more moved towards doing the heavy lifting, the true surgery part. So there's some great examples out there. I think my warning for most of my clients is to go, don't get taken by this too quickly. There is a thinking stage to go through first. And whether you love or hate Elon Musk, he has actually got a very good sequence for thinking about automation. So his first step is question everything, question every requirement, even if it comes from boss, right? If it comes from a department, that's even worse, a faceless department. Question every single requirement. Next, delete as much as you can. Take as much out of the process or the policy as you would, and cut deep. It's better to add it back in afterwards if you really need to. Then streamline that process, and then finally accelerate it. And only then think about automation with AI. There's a rush sometimes to jump straight to stage 5, and of course, we risk automating things that aren't valuable, that aren't needed, and just being faster at doing things that aren't really valuable to our service users. So, so there's that part. I think the other thing I'd just mention is, AI can be used for other things as well. We look at, we're doing some work to help create and assemble the best teams in the world. So there's a lot of research out there about what makes a fantastic team, and it's less about our individual components, it's actually how the team works. And that can be codified. And you can start to profile people and work out, actually, out of this team, if you took Adrian out and put Margaret in instead, the team would actually work better together and be more productive. So even coming out of the task and taking a step back and thinking about how you combine human beings to be more productive is certainly an area we're involved in at the moment with some clients.
Brilliant, thanks Adrian. I've got one more question for all of the panel, and then I'm going to come to you in the audience, so have your questions ready. But I mean, on that note about how you can think about profiling people and teams, making good teams, and I think Imma and Fariz, you mentioned the human element, this complements the human is still in the loop. I think for a lot of civil servants in the room, it's quite a scary thought that AI is going to come in and change everything in such a radical way, but also maybe, let's be honest, it's going to reduce the numbers of people who are working in the civil service. So what would your kind of message to people be in terms of what the impact of AI is going to have on the workforce over the next, say, 5-10 years?
The way I look at it is that we have the opportunity as public servants to influence that journey of AI. And we can influence it in terms of the build also. So we're not, separated from the build. And as public servants, I think we have that opportunity to shape where AI is going. And when I say this, I mean things like in terms of what you talked about, some of the lived experiences that we can bring into AI to make sure that it's representing those lived experiences of the populations that we're supposed to be serving. The other piece I think that's important is there are a lot of new jobs being created. So I know we're talking a lot about, reducing cumbersome tasks, repetitive tasks, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. To your point about the foundation, Adrian talked about, the foundation. You talked, Faris, about the foundation needed. You need to have a solid data foundation to enable and drive AI. So there are jobs around like data ethicists, like we're seeing more of that. To be able to do AI responsibly, you need to make sure that the data is properly integrated, that it reflects the realities of the people that the data needs to serve. So I think there's opportunity there to have more people leaning in on the data itself and how we consolidate and combine that data. The other big area is privacy. So I don't know how it works in the UK, but in Canada, we have a Privacy Act that's evolving. And to understand that Privacy Act, we need humans. So we need people who can understand the art of the possible with AI and data to be able to design some of the frameworks around how we implement privacy. Legal is another big one. When you talk about AI, especially generative AI, we're seeing the lawsuits around copyright, around so many different things. So in the legal field, do we have that expertise in terms of people understanding, how we frame and shape AI so that we're working in the right side of the law? So I think there are new opportunities that are being built, and I think we don't focus enough on that. We talk a lot about, the potential of, losing jobs, but we don't really talk about the job gains and the growth that we're seeing also, because I am seeing it, because I'm having these needs, and I think there's an opportunity there to really build a public sector that can shape, where we're going in terms of leveraging some of these tools and new opportunities.
Thanks, Iman. So AI might be replacing some jobs here, but creating a whole new load of kind of jobs over here. Does anyone want to add to that?
According to the latest report of World Economic Forum, that AI will create 170 million new jobs, only 92 million jobs will be
Really?
taken away. So there's a big positive saldo here.
So actually civil services are going to get bigger, not smaller.
Yeah, I mean, for AI application, as you mentioned, that on a daily basis, we have a lot of routine jobs. Like preparing reports, AI can do it for us. We are responding to some letters, AI can do it for us. Even draft legislation, draft strategies, draft projects, AI can help us to make it in a couple of seconds. But a human, it takes a lot of time to do it. But it took us, to be honest, almost 1 year to explain all call center stakeholders that AI will not replace your job. So this is your assistant. So we are not going to take you from the call center. It will help you to answer the questions right away, and it will increase the standards, efficiency, and effectiveness. But overall, it's a change.
Yeah.
So you have to communicate change to people in a nice way, that how it works, and like what we'll get and what we will gain, and a part of doing like routine job, what else actually, what kind of extra value you can create.
Yeah.
It's very important to communicate that.
Stephen?
Yeah, just 2 brief points. I think there's no doubt it will transform knowledge work. I think it will be a lot slower than we all imagine. These things take a lot of time to go from the kind of hype and the excitement to the reality in organizations. There's lots of barriers, and I reflect on it. I think niche domain expertise will just become more pronounced, and I reflect on a tweet that I think it was a famous tweet from 2023 where the individual said, I've just been playing with ChatGPT. I've realized that 90% of my value has gone to zero, but the other 10% has got 1,000 times greater.
Right.
And I do think that will kind of apply. There will be parts of your role or individuals that are kind of redundant, but the bits that are domain specific, the very human elements, will go up by a factor of 1,000.
Yeah.
And they're the ones individuals need to focus on. And the second point I just want to make briefly is, when it comes to kind of the adoption within organizations, really think about the trust and control for those individuals. When we're consuming ChatGPT as an individual, you kind of know if it's right or wrong because you've asked the question. When you're in an organization, if you take a police officer and they're asking about crime counting rules or parts of the law, they need the trust that the answer they're being given by the AI is confident, because they won't have that domain expertise. And I do think about the platform and the architecture you put in to give that trust and control. There's a fantastic example in one of the stands, Great Wave AI, who focus on that exact proposition. And I think that's really important to complement all the other AI solutions that are out there.
Fab. Okay, I'm going to throw it open to the audience. Who would put the first question? Yes, we've got a hand over here and then a hand down there. In fact, we got 3 on that side. We didn't take any from right down that end last time. So we'll take those 3 questions there first. Yeah, if you could keep your hand up, that would be great. We'll take those 3, so don't worry. The other 2, just put your hands back up after the question's been asked. We'll get the mics to you. Thanks.
Thank you. So just wondering, this could sound quite pessimistic, what I'm about to ask, but so AI, for me, looks to be diminishing the sort of administrative aspects and making things more efficient in that regard. So does it have the potential to change the sort of socio-economic makeup of the workforce in terms of government? Because it looks like it will be diminishing some of the more lower level jobs, but increasing some of the more specialist type of roles that are across government. Okay. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. So just to repeat the question, if AI is going to be kind of taking on some of the more administrative functions, which maybe traditionally have gone to people from certain demographics, certain backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, does that mean that we're going to skew the workforce then, that we're going to be getting people from kind of maybe more education, maybe different kinds of backgrounds, and that they're going to be the people that we're going to want in the civil service? Yeah.
I'd like to offer a different perspective. I think that a lot of civil servants came to do good in this world, like social workers or teachers, but they are all occupied in bureaucracy and filling forms. So I think AI will let them off the hook on this matter and let them focus for the things they really came to do. Of course, there will be some professions that will minimize, like typists in the courtrooms, etc. But I think most of us will just be able to focus in the things we came to do.
Thanks. Emma, you wanted to come in?
It was an excellent question. The way I look at it, I see the opportunity in terms of the future. So on my team, I have examples where I have hired people who are frontline agents in operations. And the power of the skill they bring, which is why humans are extremely important in AI, the power of that experience in terms of interacting with clients and that experience they bring into the job when we talk about developing AI or looking at data integration is so powerful in terms of how we transition. So I think there's extremely positive value in terms of leveraging the skills that exist within the public sector and the experience to translate it to where we're going. And I think sometimes we underestimate that value. The value of the executive assistant, for example, the value of people who are interacting every day with the clients. There's a knowledge they have that is very practical and hands-on that needs to be incorporated into whatever tool we use in the future. So I don't see it as a loss, I see it as a gain, but we need to be intentional in terms of change management and how we do that transition. And I think that's where the challenge needs to be focused on.
Yeah, that's the risk, I guess, isn't it?
For us,
Adrian wanted to come
Yeah,
in.
just, there's an old saying which is AI won't take your job. Someone who can use AI will take your job.
Right.
So there is, as we talked earlier, there's that bit about embracing technology like this, and there's a role to play for leadership and change management. Exactly. How do we do this? We've introduced technology before, but this is kind of different, and so we need to rethink the way in which we help people embrace technologies like this. I think longer term, there is a risk of the sort of socioeconomic change, not just in government, but actually worldwide. But the one thing I would say is there's a lot of headline statements out there which are mostly for PR purposes, right? There will be some change. We don't really know what it is. No one really knows what it is. It's probably not as fast as the headlines are saying, because it's in their interest to be on the front page. But yeah, the change is coming. But like we said all along, it will create new roles, and we've not seen any example at the moment really where a human's not involved somewhere. So actually your role may change into wrangling AI agents rather than working with a team.
And I think, Fariz, I will come to you, but I think there is a conversation going on in the UK, I know, about actually deliberately making sure that when we're looking to recruit the future generation of kind of technologists, we don't put in place blockers like you have to have had a specific degree, for example, because actually a lot of people with the skills haven't necessarily gone to university. So I think there's that conversation that's starting as well. Ferries, coming to you.
Actually, since I work for the Ministry of Economy, and our center is a kind of center of excellence for coordinating digital economy strategy and its implementation in the country, we do think that AI will replace some jobs. Therefore, we are providing some free of charge education program for the whole nation. We signed a contract with Coursera. This year, we are providing to 70,000 Azerbaijani citizens free of charge to 8,000 programs online that actually they have to reskill and upskill themselves to get aligned with all these changes. But probably all of you, when the YouTube was invented, lots of teachers, they thought that there will be no need for teachers. But now we see that actually these teachers use YouTube to make their programs online. And now economies of scale, they don't only serve within their country, but globally. Actually, such technologies create a lot of opportunity for all people to actually cover not their country, but overall globally and nationwide.
Fab, thank you. I know we've got lots of questions coming, so there were two more here. If you could put your hands up, we'll get them. Thanks.
I've got a mic, thank you. I suppose it's a question about the democratisation of AI. Within the civil service, we tend to, when things come in, we look to specialise and silo them. I'm thinking Microsoft's Power Platform as an example of how automating data processing in the Home Office has been really crammed into one small unit. How do we build a culture that actually we're not just sticking new emerging technologies like AI agents into tiny little specialised roles, but democratising it across the workforce?
Which I think links nicely to that question that we just had. So how do we make sure that we democratise AI, that it is something that people, regardless of where they sit in the civil service or in the wider public sector, can access? Ima.
I mean, from my perspective, as Chief Data Officer, I never see my job as only data. All I do is data and AI. I see myself as needing to reach across the aisle. So to your point, like it cannot only sit in the specialized roles. So the data scientists that work under me, one of the things I tell them is you need to cross the aisle, you need to go and work with people in operations, to see what's really happening. And that interaction has so much value in terms of what we do and how we embed AI and data methods and how we ensure that there's change management happening. So to your point, in my organization, we've actually developed a data and AI literacy program where we worked with our HR department to make sure that everybody across the organization has access to training modules around AI, around data. And the concept is that it is not only for these special people who studied math. I studied math, but I need to be able to translate that knowledge, into the business. So the value of being intentional in that is that we create an organization where the culture is that, me sitting in the front line talking with clients is extremely valuable. And how can I leverage data? How can I leverage AI, to enhance services to Canadians? And I think that is the culture that needs to spread across, as opposed to people saying that, AI or data is only for these people in this corner. So I think the more, we cross, talk with people in policy, talk with people in the programs, talk with people in operations, the better for us. And one of the things I say when I come to some of these conferences is one day what I would really like to see is that we're talking policy when we talk about AI and data. We're talking to people in operations. We're talking to lawyers, so we should have lawyers in the audience. We should have privacy experts in the audience. It should be multi-dimensional, multi-domain expertise. And I think that is how you drive culture change. It cannot just be me, in data talking. It needs to be mixed with everybody who needs to deliver services to the people across the country.
Thanks. On that note, we've got loads of questions, by the way, coming in, so I'm not going to give that question to everybody. We're going to move on. But can you put your hand up if you're not in a digital role? If you're not in a digital role. So that's good already. We're getting lots of professions in the room. We've got somebody with the microphone there. Then I'm going to come way over here. Look at all these questions. And then we've got one here as well. So somebody's with the mics there.
Hi. So my question is, I guess, slightly related to some of the questions that have already been asked. If the nature of AI might perhaps take some time away from some of those basic administration or some of those more tasks that we might normally put into entry-level roles, and that might mean the bar raises or changes for people starting their career. What is the panel's thoughts on, if that happens, what can we do to then support people actually beginning their career in the civil service or anywhere, leveraging that technology and bridging that gap perhaps from education or from career switching into jobs that they might normally have cut their teeth in?
Thanks. I like this. And can we get the microphone over here? I think we've got lots of hands up. I'll let Anne choose who the microphone goes to next. Thanks. So is it going to make it harder to enter the civil service? And maybe this links, I think, to a question yesterday, which was, will a basic level of digital literacy become a kind of core requirement before you join the public sector or the civil service? Do you think that's going to be something that comes in? Fariz, I'll come to you.
If you take into consideration Azerbaijan, like civil servant, you come and you take an exam, and there are some questions which requires like historical numbers. I think AI can help to prepare nice questions related to human skill set, and I think AI also, regardless, it might increase the requirements for getting a job. It creates a lot of opportunity to learn new programs and education. If you ask ChatGPT, any person, regardless they have education or not, they can ask a question, they get answer, and in a couple of seconds, they get kind of equipped with this knowledge and information. So I look AI always technology in general from the positive perspective. I always take the analogy of the knife. So knife, if you tell that knife is bad or good, it depends who is holding and for what's the reason. So if you use AI in a way that, to help people, I use a lot of AI applications to compose music, to prepare presentations, to prepare, to learn French and some other languages. So based on my personal daily interaction with a program, it defines my level of learning and my mood and etc. Based on that, even in Azerbaijan at the moment, we are trying to bring AI in education as well, based on personal attitude and personal background. The curriculum will be prepared based on that, not just like to prepare the end of the year and to take the exam and to take the performance of the students on a daily basis using AI tools to understand how the students are observing information and how they are learning. So in that case, AI might be helpful.
And I wonder then, maybe Adrian, for you, maybe the question is a bit of a moot point, because maybe we're worrying too much. Maybe the next generation of students coming out, the next possible recruits to the civil service, they are intrinsically going to understand AI. It's part of their education.
Yeah, a lot of schools are already, my son's school is helping them, rather than sort of saying, you can't use this, you're all going to cheat in your exams. Instead, they're teaching them how to use it, right? So at an early stage now in education, they're teaching people how to do that. I think it's a great question. There's lots of pyramids in the world. And if AI takes away sort of the bottom half of the pyramid, how do I climb the pyramid? I might still need the expert. But I think there's hope, right? I think you're going to have access to more knowledge than you've ever had before. Knowledge is going to become ubiquitous. And your ability to learn from that, AI can make you look pretty good pretty quickly, right? So I think there are still going to be ways up through the pyramid. The pyramid used to be based on tenure and experience, right? And it used to be years, and eventually you kind of get your way up. Well, I think there are going to be new smart cuts for a junior person coming in that's going to cut through that pyramid really quickly. And I think AI will actually help them do that. So it will be less about tenure and experience and much more about your ability to learn, your ability to embrace technology. And maybe you can become the expert in 3 years rather than doing the 20 years you thought you had to do in that career.
I wonder if AI will help us work out which bits of knowledge are more important than others, because it can feel a bit overwhelming, right, for people as well. Okay, we've got a question over here. I'm not sure who's got the microphone. If you have the microphone, could you please ask your question? Thank you so much.
I do. Thank you very much for all your insightful knowledge. What I needed to ask, you've said some great things, how digital has helped citizen services. I work for DWP, UC was introduced, and at the point of introduction, we were told this is going to cut fraud and error. I'm now in compliance and fraud, and I clearly see how fraud and error has increased to the point that the government now is struggling to how do we reduce it. So while we are having AI and talking about all the positive things that it's doing, how can we talk about the negative things that it's going to bring to us?
Okay, thank you. So just for our international speakers, so DWP, Department of Work and Pensions, UC is universal credit. So it's kind of bringing all the benefits together and people have a universal credit. So from your experience, you're saying that actually, although all this technology has been brought in, you've seen the problems around fraud and error in the system get worse, not necessarily get better. So who would like to, yes, no?
Well, I think you're very much correct, because not only the good side uses AI to do good, but also the bad side, right? Attackers in cyber attacks, fraud, of course, criminals in general. So I think that all the enforcement policy making organizations need to address this subject right away, because always criminals use it ahead of the public service, and we need to address it fast. And I also want to spotlight on the mental health issue that AI brings, because all of the fake news and just, you know, diversing the public opinion in ways that are not genuine. And this is one big fight for all public servants across the world to fight. And I think that everyone needs to take their 2025 plans and think about that. How do we help the people in those subjects? And of course, sometimes the hazards of AI can be frozen for us, making us not make the right steps. So I want to encourage everyone to use AI as much as possible, because we are all here doing good, but not forget the others that want to abuse it.
It's getting that balance right, isn't it? Imre, I will come to you, but Stephen as well. You, obviously in the police, you mentioned your third area where you use AI is fighting the kind of criminal use of AI. And the next session is on cyber, just to remind people. But do you think the public sector can ever keep up with the kind of criminal players, or get ahead of them even?
Probably not, and it's ever been thus, to be candid, you know, for good reason. You know, we have all sorts of constraints on us compared to criminals, but I suppose I remain hugely optimistic. You know, whether it was the digital revolution, you know, there's always a dislocation and uncertainty, and then things settle down. So we're fully aware of it. It changes the nature of the game, but the game has always been played this way.
Yeah.
There is always a bit of a kind of cat and mouse with criminals. It's a different cat and mouse now.
Yeah.
I think probably the scale of it, borderless crime, and the compound risk that comes with some of this that is probably perhaps some of the, in the policing, it's certainly where do you police these things? We're traditional. The public like to see visible policing.
Yeah.
Well, visible might be online and visible not in the streets, because crime is happening in a different time and space. And I think that's the thing we're all kind of orientating ourselves around.
Thanks. Emo, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, no, it was an excellent question. I just wanted to add that in leveraging AI and any tool, I think intentionality is extremely important. And the reason I'm emphasizing on the need for multidisciplinary teams is that we need to kind of get out of our echo chamber. So to your point, if you're building an AI system and then you're executing without thinking of people responsible for integrity controls, fraud controls, security controls, then you lose the opportunity to embed it by design. So within my organization, we have an AI oversight board. And we've deliberately included like people like our ADM, our senior executive responsible for integrity and fraud controls. We've also included our chief security officer, chief privacy officer, our legal counsel, to make sure that as we're adopting tools, we're thinking through what we're doing in terms of embedding all these things by design. Because we don't want to stumble into things after the fact. Yes, we're going to have to monitor, we'll discover things, but I think if we approach it in a way that's controlled, organized, intentional, and we're bringing in players across the organization, we'll at least know what we're doing in terms of some of the risks and the challenges that we will encounter. So that is how we've approached that.
Thanks, Emma. We've got a question here, and if time, I know there's a question here as well. Thanks.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Lizzie from Department for Work and Pensions as well. My question is about accessibility. Obviously, talking about productivity, there's employee productivity, which is impacted by not having the things in place that people need, but also accessibility then for our customers and our citizens. And the processes that we've currently got in place to get people what they need take quite a lot of time and make it quite difficult often for colleagues across the civil service to get customers what they need. Have you got any experience of using AI to really streamline those processes? Or sort of the sort of approaches where someone has to tell government once that they have an accessibility need, and that's met then no matter which department they come into contact with.
Thanks. So have you got any examples of where AI has really been used to streamline a process? I know in the UK we're doing the tell us once kind of approach, but any other thoughts?
I heard an interesting quote at an event the other day where it said, if you don't know your processes, don't expect AI to, and I think that struck me. So I do think there is that. That stood out for me, and I think that probably plays to some of what was just alluded to there. But I'll let others come in because I'm conscious
Yeah, and this
of time.
did come up yesterday, isn't it? That you shouldn't digitalize a bad process. So actually use the digital transformation agenda to fundamentally reform your processes.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say about this is that AI is going to be fantastic at doing exactly what you've just requested there, streamlining processes, removing stages that aren't value add, speeding things up. I know there's a lot of work going on in the NHS at the moment to look at sort of cancer times and waiting times. And they've had some early results from that already look like there's a 40% improvement in waiting times. So, AI is absolutely ripe for tackling those problems and like you say, making sure we optimize the processes first, but then speeding those up. And there's a whole series of mathematics around queuing theory, and if you look at anything around wait times, it can be solved. AI will be able to solve most of those. So I expect in the next couple of years, wait times for things like that to reduce hugely.
And I know, Fariz, you said that as well, that you look at the process first before you jump to kind of an AI solution. But I do want to get this final question in here, and we've only got 2 minutes, I'm afraid.
Thank you. My name's Faye Holder-Welch. I'm from DWP, from CFCD, Counter Fraud and Compliance Directorate. And I'm a former graphic designer, so coming from the private sector to the public sector was a bit of a transition. Now, with regards to AI, I am, as I said, I was a former graphic designer. I'm a positive, solution-focused person. So what I'd like to know is there a way that we'd be able to... I went to a conference, at Caxton House last year, and I asked one of the senior civil servants, and I said to him, is there a way that if we think of a role that we could possibly do, could we suggest it to the powers that be? Like a new role. So with the fact that we've got AI and there are some roles that will become defunct, could we make suggestions as to a specific role that we'd like to go into, and how is it possible to allow that role to be, introduced, if you know what I mean.
And I know we have got specific sessions on kind of workforce and more on the kind of, HR side of things. But does anyone, we only have a few minutes left, but I think this gets to the heart of you know, what happens to people if their role changes with AI coming in? Can they make suggestions about possibly a new position that they might want? I mean, this is something you've been involved in the past, right?
Yeah, I mean, the organizations have to create the space to have those conversations. And in my organization, like I said, we've been very intentional about including some of the networks. So we have networks of employees in the organization in terms of our conversation around AI. So we cannot have these conversations in an echo chamber again with only senior executives or only people in these specializations. So we've opened it up and we have a place, like an intake process, where people can actually share ideas around AI and they can come and have conversations around AI. So what I would encourage is for organizations to open that space for the honest and transparent conversations around not only how to shape AI for the public sector and for citizens, but also for how we shape the future in terms of career. And like I said, on our AI Oversight Board, we do have our HR counterparts in the conversation because you cannot look at AI as a technology thing itself. Like the question asked from somebody down that way, there are social impacts in terms of what we do and how we use it. So very important to include, you know, different voices, ensure people are at the table when you're having some of these conversations around implementation.
Thank you so much, Emma. And on that note, we are out of time, my friend, but just to say, if you want to ask that question again on the next session on the Transform stage, it's all about skills for innovation in the future. That would be a great question to put there. So thank you for all your brilliant questions. Sorry if we couldn't get through all of them. Please hold them. They'll be relevant for other sessions as well. We'll get through them all by the end of the day. Please join me in a warm round of applause for our great panel. You have 10 minutes to get to your next session. In here, we'll be talking about boosting cybersecurity, including using AI. On the Accelerate stage, it's service delivery management. And then on the Transform stage, as I said, it's skills for innovation. Thank you so much, everybody.